Hey everyone, it's Angie from Cedar Ridge Homestead. We butcher our own chickens. As a matter of fact, we butchered some yesterday. And typically we do them as whole chickens, but over the years we've seen that our customers they're not used to buying a whole chicken and they would much rather have parts. We do offer parts, but because of the labor involved in parting a chicken, we have to sell them for a lot more than we do our whole chickens. Our whole chickens typically sell for $5.99 a pound. They range anywhere from 3 to sometimes we've even had 8-pounders, but typically they're usually 3 to 5 pound range. I'm going to show you how to part one though, because we have found that by parting the chicken, there's so many more uses that you can get out of that one bird as opposed to just doing, your chicken breast recipe or something like that. So I'm going to start out, let me move my camera here so you can see. This is a chicken, this is around a 5-pound chicken. First thing I do, when we do our chickens, we usually tuck the legs. You just have to kind of take that out so you can get the legs apart. The easiest thing to do is to do the legs first. You want to make sure you have a good sharp knife. If it's not sharp enough, you're really going to struggle. So make sure you sharpen it and you get a good sharp knife. This one is a boning knife, and it's usually a little bit thinner than some of your other knives. So if you have something like that, that would probably be the best. So the first thing you're going to want to do is kind of open up the leg and kind of cut into this skin. And by doing that, it kind of separates that leg away from the body, because you want to cut into that so that you kind of, and I know this sounds violent, but you have to turn it so that you get this bone comes out, so that it separates the thigh from the body of the chicken. So once you can see that, you're going to take your knife and you're going to basically cut that leg off. Okay, so now I have the thigh part and I have the drum. The easiest way to separate those is there is a natural line. I don't know if you can see this. There's a natural line, a fat line that goes in between. If you hit that with your knife, you should be able to get between the thigh and the drum. So sometimes I kind of miss, but sometimes you can feel it with your knife. So you want to separate those. If you want to skin them, you can skin them at this point, but I'm going to keep the skin on mine. So I've got my thigh piece, which is a good piece of meat. It could be similar to a breast. I mean, it does have one bone in it, but some people like that because it's a lot more moist than a chicken breast. We like to grill them sometimes. There's different recipes that I have. And then of course your typical drumstick. So I'm going to separate those, and then I'm going to come around and I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So like I said, you want to separate that skin a little bit so that you can bend that thigh open. And you want to bend it until you see that joint pop up. And then we're going to cut that off. And as you see, I find that fat line, I cut right between it, and I nailed it that time. I didn't have the issues. So now I've got my 2 breasts or 2 thighs and 2 drumsticks. Next part is to separate this wing. There's really not a wrong or right way, but sometimes if you let the weight of the chicken come down, it makes it a little bit easier to find that joint, and you want to cut that out. Now you can separate this. You're going to want to take the tip of the wing off. So that's usually a garbage piece. I usually put that aside for my chicken stock. So it's up to you. Sometimes I have to get kind of so we'll discard this or use it for our chicken stock, and then I can separate this in the middle, and you've got what you normally would have if you go get wings. You've got the drum, and then you've got what we call the flat That's the piece with the two little bones inside. So now we've got those separated. We'll do the same thing on the other side. Again, there's not really a right or wrong way. You just kind of cut in here until you can get to that point where you separate it. All right, so now for the fun part. Another line the chicken provides you, it's like a diagram almost. You can see there's like a line right along here. You're gonna wanna cut right into here. So you're gonna be cutting through the ribs. You wanna cut as far as you can up inside, and then I wanna do the same thing on the other side. I don't know if you can see this line. So I'm gonna cut right here and go through. Now I want to remove the back of the chicken because there's really not a ton of meat that people use to cook with, but this makes really good chicken stock. Perfect for that. And I'll also show you in a minute how I make dog food out of the scraps. So again, it sounds very violent. You have to kind of separate the back, and sometimes, again, hopefully you're not squeamish about it, because you really have to get, I call it getting kind of rough with it. Don't freak out. Sometimes you might see a piece of, like, you know, here's a piece of, I don't know, maybe the lungs or something that might still be on the inside. And I know people might not be used to seeing this, but honestly, once you get over that initial thing, knowing where your food comes from to us is all that matters. You know, we know how our chickens are raised. This bird is never in bleach. We literally butchered these yesterday, and the next day after they sit in the cooler, we process them and either separate them or they go straight to the freezer. And you can be assured that they don't have any kind of antibiotics or hormones because we raise them the correct way. Our chickens get fresh pasture every day. They're moved. So they're very healthy chickens. Okay, so as you see, right now I'm just kind of removing the skin off of the breast, and I'm gonna set this aside along with that back, and I'm gonna use this for my chicken stock later. Okay, so this to me is the hardest part of the parting a chicken. There's a couple different ways you can take the breast off. I just kind of start here at the ribs, and you can sort of feel that with your knife, and you just wanna keep cutting, and sort of separating that rib cage from the breastbone. Once I get to a point where I hit this, there's like a bone that's right in the center of the breast. Once I hit that, then I usually switch over to the other side. And I just kind of cut along that middle line with my knife. And same thing, you can kind of feel the bone with your knife, and you just keep cutting until you separate it. And then look at that, I got a nice breast here. Now this part, this side here is called the tenderloin. Some people like to separate that off. It's up to you. A lot of times I'll just throw it in with whatever I'm cooking, but you can separate these tenderloins, and some people like to cook them, maybe fry them up like chicken tenders. So there's one breast. Sometimes the other one's a little more difficult, and it just depends. I'm gonna start on the front this time, and kind of, like I said, I just kind of feel with my knife until I get through that side of the breast. And then I'm gonna come over here on the other side and just cut along the breastbone till I can get him removed. And sometimes you can feel, everybody knows what the wishbone is. Sometimes you can feel the wishbone inside. You just got to kind of work it out with your knife. So now I have this other piece. As you can see, there is some meat left on it. So I'm going to use this for my stock. So now, as you see, I've got 2 chicken breasts, and I've got my other parts, and I can choose how I cook these. Sometimes, you know, we'll grill them. Sometimes I have different recipes. A lot of times I will save the wings, and we use them for football season, and I make wings. in the oven. That's usually the way we prefer it, just because it just takes a lot to freeze them. So I'm going to show you what I have done with some of the previous backs of my chickens.